Welcome to the Sort It Out SI League Guide for Australia, where we'll look at the league structure within Football Manager 2023 and run through a few save ideas if you want to start your career in the land down under. Let's go. On FM23, Australia has just one playable division with 12 playable teams, so this should be pretty simple. Right? Well, the season in Australia, as we go quite simply at the beginning, runs from around October through to the end of May, and it features a regular season and a finals series to crown both premiers and champions for each season. So the premiers is the regular season, the champions is the winners of the finals series. Of the 12 teams, 11 are based in Australia, whilst one team is based in neighbouring New Zealand. So the regular season, okay, that lasts for 26 game weeks, so 26 games where each team plays the others at least twice, plus 4 that they play 3 times. And at the end of each season, the top 6 teams go into the finals series, with the team finishing first being the A-League Premiers or regular season champions, and the top 8 sides also gain qualification into the round of 32 for the Australian Cup, which we'll cover in a bit more detail later on in the video. Right, whilst there are currently, I think there's 2 or 3 qualification berths for continental competitions, so that depends on who wins the Australian Cup as well, because one of the Australian Cup winners go into the AFC Cup. So there's a single berth for both the AFC Champions League and the AFC Cup, but there could also be a second AFC Cup, depending on who wins the Australian Cups. Okay, the finals series itself is relatively simple and straightforward. Of the 6 teams, the top 2 automatically make the semi-finals. The other 4 go into elimination finals, and it's 3v6, 4v5. The winners of that go into a two-legged semi-final. And then the winners of the 2 semi-finals go into the grand final, where the winner is crowned the A-League champions. So this all seems pretty straightforward, and it is, until you consider the squad registration and financial rules in Australia, which quickly become rather complex. Now, the matchday squad itself needs to include at least 3 under-23 domestic players, and that's either from Australia for 11 clubs or New Zealand in the case of the Wellington Phoenix. Now, the full squad itself must include a maximum of 5 foreign or visa players, and there is a salary cap for every single player, apart from the ones with a few exemptions. So if a player is a designated player, of which you can have 4 in your squad, then the salary cap doesn't apply to them. Teams can also sign 1 guest player per season, which also don't sit under the salary cap. And there are restrictions around loans domestically and non-domestically across the season and at any one time as well. Right, it doesn't stop there. Teams can also offer 16 scholarship contracts to young players under the age of 23, which all have minimum wages depending on whether they're 23, 22, 21, etc. And there are concessions then made on top of the salary cap to loyalty players who have served more than 4 years with the club, and it scales up when they've served 10 years with the club. And there's also homegrown exemptions and concessions, rather, that come through when the players have come through the club's youth system. You can also carry over a small portion of the unused salary cap if you don't use it all for the next season. Simply put, give the rules page a good read before you start getting going in an A-League save. Right, my head is spinning a little bit, just trying to get my head around all of those financials. I'd definitely say read the rules page. That is my one rule of this video, is read the rules page, because it's a little bit confusing and getting your head around, and until you get there in a real life situation, it might not make full sense. Right, so who are you going to manage out of these 12 teams? Well, we're going to look at 5 of them. And well, we're going to start with the most recent 21-22 champions, Western United. Now, this is a team from the Melbourne area. They cover sort of the Western Victoria area, so Western Melbourne and that way. Hang on. That. Whichever way the camera's going, it's west. Anyway, they are one of the newest teams to enter the A-League, the second newest. One team has entered since then. And they've just completed 3 full seasons before making their way to the grand finals and capturing their first ever title. Now, the club has pretty average facilities, but when you compare it against the rest of Australia and the rest of the A-League clubs, they fare pretty well. But because of their relative newness, this is kind of a bit of a surprise victory. You probably aren't expecting a team that's only been in the league 3 seasons to win it. So the challenge for you is going to be to keep up that success and basically win more seasons than they've not won. So if you win the next 2, job's a good one. Keep that success going strong. And when we speak of success, we can't not speak of the most successful club in A-League history, and that is Sydney FC. Now, the Sky Blues have won a combined 9 Premiership and Championship titles, with their most recent of both coming in the 2020 season. Before Australia joined the AFC, it was in the OFC, the Oceanian Football Confederation, and Sydney did take a victory in the OFC Champions League, but they haven't so far progressed beyond the round of 16 in the AFC equivalent. So that is a target for you if you're going to manage them. Sydney do have good facilities and are well placed within Australia to continue extending their record despite a disappointing 8th place finish in the season. But they do have quite a rival who are going to try and obviously beat that record, and that's our next club. And that is the club that won the Premiership or the regular season in both of the last 2 seasons and combined their regular season title with a grand final championship in 2021. Lost in the final to Western United last season, and that is, of course, Melbourne City. And it's immediately obvious when you look at this club's overview page that they are part of the City Football Group and share ownership with Manchester United, so they've got big money. And then it's no surprise, given that ownership, that this former Melbourne Heart side, as they were known before the City Group took them over, have got some of the best facilities in the league and the country, obviously, and are always going to be expected from now on to feature at the very top of both the regular season and also get their way to the finals of the final series as well. So can you continue that regular season streak? Can you get up there with Sydney's record of 9 combined titles? It's probably going to be quite easy if you manage them and you know what you're doing. And speaking of not easy, we're going to head across to New Zealand next and the Wellington Phoenix. Now, these are obviously the only side based outside of mainland Australia, and Wellington have been in the league since 2007 when they replaced fellow New Zealand-based side, the New Zealand Knights, for that 2007 season. And throughout their history, they're the only club to never win either the regular season nor the grand finals outside of newcomers MacArthur FC. Have only been in the league for 2 seasons. So you can't really count them just yet, but in their 15 years, or I think it is, in the league, they've not reached further than the semi-finals. They've only reached semi-finals twice, back in 2011 and 2012, and they've got a highest regular season finish in the 2019-20 season of 3rd place. So they're clearly the underdogs of the league and have had the added challenge of being the only overseas team in the league as well. So it sounds perfect for a Football Manager save, and it's one I did back on FM23, I believe, and I did manage to take them to the title in the first season. So that's your challenge. Turn the Phoenix around, take them from underdogs to champions. And finally, we have our 5th team on the list, and that is Perth Glory. They are one of the last 3 surviving clubs from the National Soccer League, the league that was in place before the A-League, and they're still in the A-League today, obviously, and are one of the least successful. They've only secured 1 regular season title with no grand final success throughout the 17-year history of the league. Now, Perth struggle off the field as well, as their facilities are generally below the standard of the rest of the league. So present you with a solid challenge of turning this club around and building on the success that they had back in their NSL days and giving some glory to Perth Glory. So there we have it. That is a whistle-stop tour of the Australian A-League on Football Manager 2023, alongside 5 great save ideas. Obviously, there's 12 clubs, so I could have done a list on all 12 of them, but there are the 5 we've covered. And if you're familiar with real-life Australian football or managed in Australia on Football Manager, whether in FM23 or any other version of the game, let me know in the comments. Share your thoughts, any corrections or stories from managing in Australia. I'm glad to hear them as well. And whilst you're there, remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and check out the next league guide that's going to be on the screen after my face has disappeared, along with all of the other great content here on the channel. Thanks a lot for watching.